Shavua Tov. Over the next couple of weeks with the high holidays, we can expect to spend more time than usual in the synagogue. In the past few years of COVID, many synagogues shortened their service, but this year it seems like we're going to be going back to the regular full version, and we have to ask the question that we always have to ask, which is this good for the Jews or not? An insight may be found in a verse that raises eyebrows. The verse in our parsha, it's located in the Tochecha section, which is the scary section of the rebuke, where Moses tells the people at the instruction of God what will be the consequences of abandoning the Torah on a national level. It's bad. It's got exile, it's got famine, it's got disease, it's scary, scary stuff, so much so that the custom is that the one reading the Torah reads it in a lower tone and goes faster to get it over with, as if to say, we don't want to have anything to do with this. Now there's a verse in that Tochecha towards the end which raises eyebrows, because that verse seems to explain that why are these terrible things happening? What's the cause? The cause is tachat, because Asher lo avadata et Hashem Elokecha, you didn't serve the Lord your God besimcha, with joy. Raises eyebrows because it implies, okay, you served God, but you didn't smile, you scowled. Why is joy so consequential that even if I observed the commandment, but I did it with a scowl, such terrifying consequences could happen? What is this elusive joy anyway? Let's dig deeper. The rabbis don't necessarily tell us what joy is. The closest we have that I can think of is the saying of Ben Zoma, a great rabbinical orator from Mishnaic times, who says, rhetorically, he asks, who is rich? Ezehu Ashir, Hasameach Bechelko, the one who is happy with his portion. Ben Zoma does not ask, Ezehu Sameach, who's happy. He doesn't give us a definition of happiness, perhaps because happiness is something too deep and too total to be confined to a simple verbal definition. So he gives us an example, somebody who is happy with their portion. Let's dig a little deeper, let's be a little Sherlock Holmes and see if we can identify what exactly this happiness is all about. And how does one achieve it? Because if we're going to get blamed for not having happiness when we do the commandments, well, then we should know how to have happiness so we can do it the right way. So what exactly is it? Sherlock Holmes would say, let's take a look at the evidence, perhaps the symptoms, to use a contemporary term. The main symptom of joy is very simple and very clear. It is song. It is music. Simcha brings shira. When somebody is rejoicing, when somebody is happy, the automatic response is to sing. When the Israelites were liberated from the Egyptians by crossing the Red Sea and seeing their oppressors destroyed, and they knew they were finally free, how did they respond? By singing, by song. When we say the grace after the meals, we recite the psalm Shira Ma'alot, Beshuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, and God brings about the redemption of Zion. Hayinu kecholmim will be like dreamers. Parenthetically, the great Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik explained, what does it mean will be like dreamers? He says that in this world, when people have something that they're looking forward to, and they have an idealized vision of how great it's going to be, when I get that car, when I get that job, when I get married, when I get that house, whatever it's going to be, and when it actually happens, there's always a bit of a letdown. It may be wonderful, but it's not quite like it was in the dream. But there is one thing that will be 100% like it was in the dream, and that is the Geulah, the redemption of the Jewish people, the reestablishment of the Beit HaMikdash, the reintroduction of the divine spirit among the people. That will be exactly as great as we dreamed it would be, and therefore, what is the response? Joy. Az yimalei sechok pinu, our mouths will be filled with laughter, which implies joy, and symptom, lo shonenu rina, our tongues with joyous song. So singing and happiness go together. Now this happiness finds itself in some surprising places. For example, bringing sacrifices. Twice in this week parsha we have an idea of joy in bringing sacrifices. One is a simple verse which says, V'zavachta shlamim, you'll bring a peace offering, ve'achalta sham, you shall eat it there in the temple precinct, V'samachta, you shall rejoice. So you're joyful when you bring sacrifices. And if that's the case, then where is the song? Well, there is song. In the temple, the Leviim, the Levites, had a choir, and they sang songs to accompany the bringing of the sacrifices. So there is joy in the temple. And by extension, since we don't have the temple today on the Temple Mount, we have miniature temples. Those are our synagogues. The rabbis call them migdash ma'at, small temples. And therefore it is entirely appropriate that we should have the same joy and simcha and singing in our prayer services, because that is similar to what was done in the temple at Jerusalem, and that is a symptom of joy. And we should have great joy. B'veit Hashem na'alech b'ragesh. We shall go to the house of the Lord with great emotion. King David said, "One thing I asked from the Lord, Shivti b'veit Hashem, I shall sit in the house of the Lord all the days of my life." That's where his heart was. And how did he respond? With Shirah. King David wrote the Psalms. He gave us all of those songs. He is known as Neim Zmirot Yisrael, the sweet singer of Israel. And at the beginning of the parsha, we have the declaration of the first fruits. When a person has their first fruits in the land of Israel, they bring it to the temple, they bring it to the priest, to the Kohen, and they recite a declaration about these first fruits, which we know from the Passover Seder, because the verses that the declaration contains are the basis of the Haggadah Shel Pesach. Arami oved avi vayered Mitzrayma. A wandering Aramean was my father who went down to Egypt, and there we multiplied, and the Egyptians treated us badly, and God brought us out with his outstretched arm and a strong hand, and brought us into the land, and here are the first fruits. But there are two words at the beginning of that declaration which seem to be unclear what they mean. Ve'anita ve'amarta. When you show up with the first fruits, you shall answer and you shall say. Who exactly are you answering? Who asked you a question? There are some commentaries who say that indeed the Kohen, as part of the ritual, sees the man with the basket of the fruits and says, "What are those?" And so then he answers. However, others say that the word ve'anita doesn't mean you answer, it means you will sing. Again, the symptom of joy. You're bringing your first fruits. This is a great moment of happiness. It has to be accompanied by song, so therefore you sing, ve'anita. The word to answer is often used to mean song. For example, after the Israelites sang the song at the sea, after the Egyptians were drowned, Miriam takes the women out for an extra singing session, and the verse there says, Va'ta'an lehem Miriam. Miriam answered to the women. So there is singing there. And the word singing and answering can be connected as well. We have many prayers in our service where the cantor says one thing and the congregation sings their response. So la'anot, to answer and to sing, can be synonymous. But what do we see from this? That singing is a symptom of joy, and it is in surprising places, bringing of sacrifices, for example. So let's take a look at this a little deeper. When does a person sing? When something touches them deep in their heart, when that's where their heart is. For example, a parent at the wedding of their child. Who is happier than that? Of course they're going to sing. It would ruin the experience if the people under the chuppah are going to have a scowl on their face as they go through the ceremony. No, what happens is that every part of the ceremony, people interrupt with song. You have to. When you have simcha, you just simply have to sing. And that is the indicator of where your heart really is. Are we like King David, who want to be in the temple, who want to be singing the songs of God? Is that where we want to be? Or are we looking at our watch, wondering, when is this going to be over already? That's an important question to ask. If you've ever been to a Karlebach-style Friday night service where there's singing and dancing, you can't help but feel as if your feet are not touching the ground anymore. You're reaching towards heaven. Now, there's only so much heaven we can handle before we starve to death. So you have to eventually end and go home and make Kiddush and have your Shabbos meal. But for the time that's reasonable, a person there feels that they wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world. It's so inspiring. And that should really be our prayer service. That should be our feelings about that. But the fact that simcha is connected to sacrifices is teaching us a very important lesson. That sacrifices are not taxes. Commandments are not taxes. Somebody owes taxes to the government. Do you imagine that they're going to be, singing songs of joy when they file the return and write the check? I don't think so. Accountants may sing songs of joy on the day after tax day that they're finished with the job, but generally speaking, people do not sing songs of joy when they're bringing taxes. Do we view the commandments as taxes just so we can get on with our lives and not go to jail? Do we view the sacrifices as something we have to pay in order to avoid getting zapped? Well, if that's the case, that's very sad. If we don't have simcha, if we don't have shira, song, it means that our heart isn't there. And that's something we need to work on. And I think that's why Ben Zoma doesn't give us a definition of simcha, because it's not something that you externally get. It's something that you have to build into your very identity, that this is who you are, somebody whose heart is in holiness, is in spirituality, is in Torah and in mitzvot, and these are the highlights of our lives. Rosh Hashanah, being in shul, singing the ancient melodies and the new melodies alike with joy and gusto, that's got to be the best moment of our lives, of our year. And therefore, if we look at it without that, if we don't have that, then maybe we look at our Torah and mitzvot as if it's taxes. And maybe that's what the Torah means when it says that the tochecha comes because we don't serve Hashem b'simcha, meaning that we're not understanding what the Torah is really about. And that is a tremendous insult to the Torah. We're looking at the service of God as a unpleasant duty that we need to get it over with. Chas v'chalila. God forbid. Rather, we should find the priorities of Torah and mitzvot and spirituality that will fill our hearts with simcha, that we have to sing. And when we go to shul, sing with as much gusto as you can. And with God's help, that will mean we'll have a year full of song, full of occasions for simcha. Shavua Tov.